from Team Super Awesome Art, and today I have this custom Gizmo Funko Pop to share with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and roll some footage of me actually working on this figure, and then at the end of the video, we'll go over everything I did to make this guy. So please stick around for all that. Okay, so for this custom, since I'm going to be sculpting a Gizmo, I'm going to use a Gizmo Funko Pop as the base for my sculpt. I'm using Super Sculpey clay as my sculpting medium, and the first thing I do is start by blocking out the eyes, and I do this by adding clay around both eyes, and then I do the same for the snout. Once the clay is in place, I then start shaping the clay around the eyes. I then do the same for the snout and start to give the clay some shape. I add a mouth and a nose so that I can start getting a feel for what his expression is going to be. Next, I add clay to the top of the head and begin to smooth and connect everything together. I end up adding more clay to the top of the head, and the reason I'm doing this is because I really don't like the square shape on this pop. It works really great for a pop, but for a more realistic Gizmo, I really want a round shape to this head. I add clay to the sides of the head to round out the sculpt some more, and then I move on to the back of the head, covering his entire head with clay. Now that his head is completely covered in clay, I move on to adding fur texture to the entire head. This is by far the most tedious and time-consuming part about working on a furry creature. When I work on sculpting fur, the first thing I like to do is kind of block out where I think the folds and the wrinkles would be in the fur. This is most noticeable around the brows and the wrinkles in the forehead. You may have noticed I added clay to the top of the eye, and the reason I did this was because the pop eye alone felt a little shallow, so by adding clay, it gives him more of a bug eye look. Next, I move on to his headband, and I do this by rolling out some clay using a round wooden tool that I have lying on hand. Next, I square off the edges of the clay using my silver tool. In fact, I think for this entire pop, I only used these two sculpting tools. I then place the headband onto Gizmo's head. After comparing it to my reference picture, I realized that it's way too thick and go ahead and take away some of the clay. Looking much better, I added once more to the top of Gizmo's head, and that seems to be working way better than the first try. With the headband draped where I think it should go, I then begin to add texture to the fur around the headband as well as to the headband itself. Once I'm satisfied with the fur texture, the placement of the headband, and his expression, I am then ready to place my pop in the oven so that the clay can harden. Once the pop comes out of the oven and the clay is nice and hard, I go ahead and remove the head from the body, and I do this using a heat gun to warm up the glue that holds the head to the body, and then I remove the head from the body. Next, I begin to add clay to his entire ear so that I can start sculpting and texturing his ears. Next, I create veins by rolling out tiny pieces of clay and adding it to his ears. Once the veins are in place and the ears are complete, I bake him one more time so that the ears can harden. Now it's time for the body, so I'm going to have to adjust the position of the arms to accommodate the weapons. To do this, I heat up the existing glue around the joints of the Funko Pop and gently tug until the arms come right off. Since he will be holding weapons, I'm going to have to turn his open hands to closed fists. To do this, I use a heat gun to warm up the vinyl. Then I use a sharp knife to cut through the fingertips so I can sculpt a brand new hand. If you're using this video as a tutorial and would like to try this at home, please remember that all the tools that I use, or most of the tools I use, are quite dangerous and can cause harm. So please be careful. Now it's time to reposition his arm. It looks like this time I'm going to be using a glue called Quick Hold. I'm going to add it to the joint of the arm. I'm allowing the glue to set for a couple seconds, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the arms, positioning his arm straight out in front of him. Once the glue has set around his arm joints, I go ahead and add clay to his entire body, so then I can start adding fur texture. In the movie, he wears a little rope belt around his waist, so I'm going to go ahead and add this. I do this by rolling out a thin piece of clay, and then I'm going to kind of move the fur texture that I have already sculpted. I'm doing this because I want the fur to kind of lay over the belt in some areas. Once my belt is thin enough, I go ahead and tuck it in between the fur. Next, I begin to sculpt a little knot in the front. Now it's time for his bow. So in the movie, Gizmo uses a paperclip and turns it into a bow. And originally I was going to use a paperclip for this custom, but when I held a paperclip up to my custom Gizmo, I realized that the paperclip was way too thin and it really wasn't fitting to scale. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit thicker gauged wire, and I'm going to bend it around a template that I drew out. I made this template using the bow that he made in the movie as kind of my guide, so I kind of tried to make it as exact as possible, and then I kind of just made it to scale. As you can see, I kind of drew it out a couple times before finding the right size that works for my custom. Now that my bow is complete, it's time to add it to my pop. Now, when I started this custom, I knew I wanted him to be holding 2 weapons, but I really held out on the position of the weapons till now because I wanted everything to be made and sculpted before I decided. The reason for this is because I really didn't want my custom to feel crowded in whichever position I decided to put the weapons. I went ahead and baked the body so that the sculpt can harden, and now I'm going to go ahead and add closed fists and weapons to my custom. Once I was satisfied with all my pieces, I went ahead and baked everything, and then he was ready to prime. Now for primer, I always use Rust-Oleum primer, and this time I used the color gray. Now for this custom, I wanted his bow to resemble a paper clip, so I went ahead and covered it with tape so that it would stay silver and won't get full of primer. One step that I failed to get on video was sanding. Now, I try and make sure that my customs are smooth where they need to be, and to do this, I always sand my pops and then go ahead and prime one more time if needed. Now that he's all nice and smooth and primed, he's ready for paint. I base out his entire body in a dark brown color. Next, I add a white patch to the top of his head. And a white patch of fur around his eye. I continue to add white patches of fur throughout his body. The best advice I can give you guys when making a custom pop is to use lots and lots of reference pictures. It really doesn't matter how well you know a character. Sometimes the little details are often overlooked or even just forgotten. I add a burnt orange color to everything that is not fur. So his ears, eyes, snout, hands, and feet. Next is on to highlights. I use a lighter color than the base color to highlight certain areas of the pop. And I'm using red for his headband. The paint that we use for our pops is acrylic paint. I have a tutorial video up on our channel that kind of goes over everything that we use to make our pops, including primer, paint, and sealant. You can check that out on our channel. I'll post a link in the comment section. Now it's time for finishing details. When it comes to sculpting and painting for me, I usually work in the evening or really late into the night. It's just because I feel like I'm most creative then, but when it comes to finishing details, I always try to do this during the day where I have natural sunlight to work with. Next, it's on to the eyes. I'm using black acrylic paint and a very fine tipped paintbrush. I'm adding brown to match his eyes in the movie and then following it up with some highlights. In the movie, Gizmo uses a paper clip and a rubber band to make a bow for his arrow, so I'm going to be doing the same thing and I will be using a rubber band as well. So while I continue to tie a tiny knot in this rubber band, I'm going to go ahead and mention something that I forgot to mention before, and that is to his arrow, I added an eraser to the end of the toothpick so that it resembles a pencil. You can see it there lying on the table. Alright guys, I hope you stick around to the end of this video. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this guy, but before I do, I want to say thank you for watching so far. I hope you enjoyed this video and me voicing over how to make this pop. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please comment below so I know to make more videos like this. They're a little bit more time consuming, but hopefully you guys get a lot more out of them. So please stick around till the end so we could talk a little bit more about this character. I feel like Gizmo is an amazing character. The 80s were an amazing time for creatures, and Gizmo is definitely one of my favorites. So please stick around for more. Thank you guys for watching so far. Alright guys, so here he is all finished. I am super excited for this one because this is a pop that I love working on. Gizmo was actually one of the first Funko Pops that I ever customized. I think it was maybe the 4th or 5th pop that I ever customized. And he is actually the first pop that I ever bought. So I had bought, well, before I started customizing, I had bought 2 Gizmos. I bought one for myself to keep in the box as a regular Funko Pop, and then I bought one to customize. And that video is actually up on our channel way down below. If you scroll all the way down, you should be able to find it. Like I said, it was one of the first pops that I worked on. But I love working on this character, and I think this is why I love doing
dog or pet pops as well, because I do love hair texture and adding hair texture to pops. So this was really one of the first characters that I got to do that on. And what I love about this little guy is he's completely different than my first one. So I know he has a lot of little added features and stuff, but also just the colors that I chose for this one, the hair texture, they're different than my first one. I know it has a lot to do with that one being one of the first pops I've done, and this is the most recent pop I've done. So time really does show the difference in skill and just things you pick up along the way. So I love that one. I love the way he looks. I love his colors. He's brighter than this one, but I also love this one too because he's just so different and unique. So yeah, that just goes to show you really have to put in a lot of time and effort into customizing in order to kind of find new tricks and new ways of painting, new ways of sculpting. So I love this little guy. I love the contrast between the two, and I'm so glad that I got to do this one. So this one was a commission request. He wanted it like at the end of the movie where he has this little Rambo look to him with the little bandana, the little red bandana around his head, or headband around his head. And what I did with this one is I made it detachable, so you take this part off and then you can slide the pencil out. So it's easier to ship for me, but it goes in just like that, and he holds it like that, so it comes in and out. And then I also gave him a little, let me see if you can see it. There's a lot of stuff in this guy, but I gave him a little belt, and it goes all around his waist. And then of course the hair texture on this one, I love the way it came out. I also did a lot of shadowing and highlights with the color so you can really see the hair texture. And then of course his ears, I gave him little veins and little details that the pop doesn't have, so just so he has more of a movie feel than a pop feel. There you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you go back and check out the first Gizmo video that I ever made so you can kind of see the difference in the two. Let me know what you think of this guy. If you have any questions, comment below and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And as always, guys, subscribe to see more cool stuff from us in the future. Thank you so much for watching.